In today's news, yet another projected timeline for the Roadtown Ferry Terminal to be reopened to international passengers has been announced. That's March 1st, 2020, exactly 1 year later. JOMA Properties and HLSCC partner and BVI Red Cross, along with Green VI and DWM, team up for another Seacoast Bay cleanup.
As well as Premier Fahie addresses statement by Governor Jaspert on public accessible register, as well as in Puerto Rico, they have a new governor and they're starting to relax their COVID-19 protocols. Viewers, all this and so much more when 284 News returns.
Hey BVI, it's 2021 and guess what? We are kicking taboo to the curb. Let's face it, the world lacks conversation. So, we are bringing you homemade cocktails, thought-provoking topics, and nuggets to rock your world. A show that promises to keep it fun, frank, and fresh. So, come on this journey with me. This is Keeping It Candid, conversations for the modern world.
Welcome, everybody. It is Wednesday, January 6th, 2021. I'm Ron Grant.
And I am Kyla Kenesha Forbes, and we are coming to you live straight out of the British Virgin Islands. Now, Ron, we have so much to get into, but viewers, we will jump into our news summary for today. We see where Honorable Fraser calls for a new committee to ensure government projects are executed. Very important stuff, guys, as well as undercover racism in the BVI being used to divide and conquer. These were some of the words by our dear Premier, Honorable Fahie. Once again, we see where local government should have oversight over disaster management. Also words from our dear Premier, and 9 new COVID-19 cases right here in the Virgin Islands.
Of course, viewers, we're going to get into a lot of these headlines, but before we go, Kyla, the most recent that you read, our local government should have oversight over disaster management, which were the words of Premier Fahie, which are very interesting comments. We see where disaster preparedness and disaster management in the territory of the Virgin Islands has become more and more a very pivotal role. Of course, from the events of 2017, we saw where the international support of the UK was very prominent. And there are two things that are very interesting about the leader of government business and his comments. Two, you would think that in a time of disaster, you would warrant or look forward to international support. If and when the disaster management is to be under the portfolio of the Premier's office, that initially means that this now becomes the responsibility of the government of the Virgin Islands, which means that in the need for assistance, outside assistance, we would stand at a disadvantage because we perhaps may not get it because of the switch in portfolios. So that's a very interesting comment that we're going to continue to research. And of course, Mrs. Antoinette Skelton, she is out, as we mentioned yesterday. However, Mrs. Jeanette Scatliff-Boyens is in as acting director of the Social Security Board, and Premier Fahie addresses the governor's statements on a public accessible registers. Very important story. Of course, as you mentioned, Puerto Rico has a new governor and he is hitting the ground running. These are so much more of our summary, and we're going to begin with our newscast on the local scene here in the British Virgin Islands. The British Virgin Islands Ports Authority, in conjunction with the Premier's Office of the Virgin Islands, has issued an update on the reopening of the Roadtown Ferry Terminal to international passengers. Now, in an official press release received from the BVI Ports Authority on January 5th, 2021, it was noted that on December 7th, 2020, a target date of the 21st of January was announced for the reopening of the Roadtown Ferry Terminal. Now only to incoming international visitors based on the progress, of course, of the current projects at the facility. The British Virgin Islands Ports Authority and the government of the Virgin Islands have stated that they are cognizant of the constantly changing global status, of course, the global pandemic, that is COVID-19, which now includes a second wave that we're watching closely and that is already affecting countries. As such, their overall objective is the health and safety of the residents and visitors of the British Virgin Islands. Now, to this end, significant adjustments to the reopening plan that are said to ensure a safe and efficient return of international ferry passengers. Operators at the Roadtown Ferry Terminal has been mandated. The BVI Ports Authority has officially notified all stakeholders that based on a projected timeline of work to be completed, the date for the reopening has been readjusted. The Cabinet of the Virgin Islands on December 30th, 2020 approved the new plan from the British Virgin Islands Ports Authority and adjusted the timeline for the reopening of the Roadtown Ferry Terminal to incoming international ferry passengers to another projected timeline under the theme Ready to Serve for March 1st, 2020. Now, with this in mind, Kyla, the sea borders of the British Virgin Islands to international passengers will now be closed as of March 1st, 2020, which is the new projected timeline for an entire year. I think when we look at this and we put this into perspective, it is absolutely daunting to think that our seaports have and will be closed for an entire year. There are a number of things that are very important about this story that we need to look at. First of all, while persons might agree with it or not, while persons might think that the government of the Virgin Islands is flip-flopping, I think essentially they are doing what they think is best in protecting the borders. And in doing so, it also highlights the lack of preparation that stakeholders and government officials have been. If you think about it, seaports has been closed for an entire year. While we're on lockdown, while we're closed, these are important, very pivotal points for us to be really meeting with stakeholders to assess and to reassess the progress. For you to look at it now a year later and say, this is the case, this is still the case, it shows, I think, what we've been hearing on and on. Perhaps there's not a plan. Perhaps there's not a concise plan. We see, of course, a lot of persons who have been weighing in on the conversation. Former legislator Myron V. Walwyn, Minister of Education, made a recent Facebook post to which that story is on our website, where he said that perhaps if there's not a COVID-19 coordinator, and I'm paraphrasing, perhaps one should be appointed to really steer the process of the COVID-19 trajectory. But I do think when we look at all stakeholders, especially from the marine perspective, to think that our borders, our seaports rather, will be closed for an entire year is absolutely daunting.
Most definitely. Now, Ron, not just in the BVI, but internationally, the changing of dates, it definitely does look a little flip-flop.
Sketchy,
Yes, for a lack of a better word. But we do understand that the situation that is COVID-19, the pandemic, is very fluid, a very fluid situation, especially with this new strain coming out of definitely nowhere, and so much is happening across the world. I think maybe this is one of those reasons why, but I think more of those conversations need to be to the forefront.
And publicly as well.
Yes. So giving a reason and persons really understanding what that looks like, or even so, if it has to be pushed again, why are we pushing it? Is it an indicator? Is it the fact that it is a very fluid situation? I think more of those conversations need to be had, because 1 year later is definitely a lot, and we definitely have to control that narrative locally as well as internationally.
In that same breath, Kyla, it brings us back to the conversation of the existing curfew. While the territory of the Virgin Islands are open to tourists, we just closed out the Old Year celebration. And I don't think the general public understands the significance as to why there is still an existing curfew on the territory, be it for a few hours. Why are we still having a curfew? What is the reasoning behind it? And I think those are some of the questions that we look forward to having an answer to at some point.
I do agree. Now, as we move on, viewers, now during Tuesday, which was yesterday's session of the House of Assembly, we see where Premier of the Virgin Islands, Honorable Andrew A. Fahie, has addressed the governor's, that is Governor Jaspert's recent statement regarding the territory's publicly accessible registers. Now, Premier Fahie labeled the statement as misleading and a misrepresentation of what his government had actually agreed to. Now, viewers, the statement in which Premier Fahie is referring to is the governor's final New Year's statement to the people of the Virgin Islands. Ron, we would remember that statement because we reported on it. So now Governor Jaspert issued a statement on December 29th. He said, and I quote, "I applaud the government for reopening the borders for committing to introducing the publicly accessible registers of beneficial ownership by 2023, which will put our financial services at the forefront of the industry, and for introducing new initiatives to diversify our economy. I hope for new prosperity, resilience, and equal opportunities for the people of the BVI in 2021 and beyond. Now, in the House of Assembly, Premier Fahie expressed his sentiments towards the governor's statement. He said, and I quote, "I saw an article where the governor released over the holidays, which I was dismayed, saying that we agreed to the publicly accessible registers and did not put in under certain conditions. You see the misleading statements?" Fahie stated. Now he went on to say, "Nobody sees a problem with these things once it is that entity," which he is referring to as the governor's office, "and then releases things in it that, when I read them, or are not what his government stated or is doing, but it is what they want the people to believe." Now, Ron.
There's something I have to say about that, Kyla. The governor is not inaccurate in his statement. The territory of the Virgin Islands has signed on to adhere to the UK's beneficial ownership. Be it a certain date, be it later on, that's what we signed on
or
to.
under certain conditions.
Correct.
Now, these conditions becoming available to the public of the Virgin Islands, that is something the Virgin Islands government will have to do.
Yes.
But saying that they have signed on, I think that is, for the most part, what has happened.
Correct.
You know, so to have the conversation as to what that really means for a territory. When we heard of it as a news house, we were asking those same questions. What does this mean for the people of the Virgin Islands? And we're still yet to understand what that means for a territory.
One of the things that we saw coming out of the government of the Virgin Islands is after the signing, that's when we saw questions being asked as to what it was going to look like, how is it going to affect us. Again, that is like signing a lease for a landlord and then asking about utilities. Do you offer air conditioning? Do you offer... You don't do that. That's not the way it works. And I think perhaps in the conversation, there are a lot of educated people in our territory outside of the leader of government business, of course, and his administration, who are equipped to speak to us on the necessities of this, particularly as it pertains to the financial services sector. And to date, we have not necessarily been able to hear what this means for the territory. So while I understand and I am sympathizing with the Honorable Premier as it pertains to some of the quote-unquote misleading messages that may be out there, when you look at it in logistics, that's what it looks like. You know, viewers, continuing on, we have so much more. JOMA Properties and the H. Stout Community College, they are partnering together with a very special initiative. We have so much more. All this after a word from our sponsors. You're watching 284 News.
The wind! Oh!
Twitter the hell
I'm freaking out!
Is time.
284 News.
Coming to you live and direct from the beautiful British Virgin Islands.
What's poppin', what's really good, what's happening, what's up?
Davis has won it for the Lakers!
Viewers, welcome back. You're watching 284 News out of Tortola in the beautiful British Virgin Islands. Thank you so much for sticking with us. Now, continuing on the local scene here in the BVI, JOMA Properties Limited, in conjunction with the H. Stout Community College Workforce Training Division, Center for Professional Development and Community Education, completed an intensive 3-month training for their maintenance team. Now, the training covered 3 areas of concentration: basic carpentry, basic plumbing, and basic electrical. The aim of the workshop series was to orient participants with the basic techniques supplemented and with practical skills to help the participants become more proficient in their fields. Now, the immense hands-on experience and augmented with the demonstration, of course, where participants had to display their practical knowledge and skill of their concepts being taught. Participants were assessed and evaluated in the following areas: degree of skill, selection of tools, speed and use of tools, instruction needed, work ethic, degree of safety, knowledge of terms and content. Participants were pushed beyond their comfort zone and excelled at all levels as they competently demonstrated the objectives as set out by the customized curriculum. Now, kudos, of course, to JOMA Properties management team who, from the inception, supported their employees and demonstrated their commitment towards propelling and enhancing, of course, the productivity of fostering higher morale. Now, according to Dr. Arlene Smith-Thompson, HLSCC Stouts Community College Vice President of Academic Affairs, based on the success, she said, of this training initiative, it is the recommendation of HLSCC Workforce Training Division that JOMA Properties Limited considers continuing its developmental training at the intermediate level. Now, the benefit, she said, to JOMA included the enhancement of productivity, promotion, standardized procedures, and increased employee morale. These are all useful elements in building an effective and efficient workforce. Now, HLSCC Center for Professional Development and Community Education is a self-sustaining and income-generating unit that will provide leadership in addressing the professional development and community education needs of the territory of the Virgin Islands, by extension, of course, the Caribbean region. Now, it forms part of the Workforce Training Division at a community college. Kyla, you know I love when companies, corporate or private, really come together and make sure that their teams and their staff are trained and receive professional development. The HLSCC Stout Community College has continued to serve as a very integral part of training for locals and, of course, persons across the region. I believe wholeheartedly that HLSCC Stout would be absolutely pleased with the work that's being done at the HLSCC Stout Community College in a variety of disciplines, and they should be commended.
I do agree. Now, great stuff. Now, as we move on, Puerto Rico has a new governor. Now, Pedro Pierluisi. Pierluisi was sworn in on Saturday as the U.S. territory's new governor. Now, Pierluisi, a Democrat who previously served as a Puerto Rico representative in Congress for over 8 years. Now, Ron, Puerto Rico for quite some time has had a rough few years. We can definitely say that. So any new leader in that region has much to deal with. Now, we see where local media over in Puerto Rico are saying that Pierluisi will inherit a stagnant economy, a divided legislature, $1 billion public debt restructuring, and a publicly fractured U.S. territory hit hard by the pandemic, as well as the struggles from recovering from their latest hurricanes and earthquakes. That is quite to inherit as a leader. I don't think anyone wants to be a leader in these times to deal with the pandemic and so much more, but someone has to do it. Now, upon his swearing in as governor, he has already hit the ground running. Now, Puerto Rico's new governor announced on Tuesday that he will reopen beaches, marinas, and pools and eliminate a Sunday lockdown and shorten the curfew that has been in place since the pandemic began to control the number of COVID-19 cases. Now, the governor stressed that alcohol will be banned at beaches and other places, and that social distancing is required between people who are not family members, with no large group allowed to gather. Meanwhile, the new curfew will run from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. daily. And of course, face masks remain mandatory. He said that the new measures go into effect on January 8 and will be placed for 30 days in the first instance, but can be amended anytime if there is a spike in cases. Now, the announcement was chaired by many across Puerto Rico, as we can only imagine, Ron. As the pandemic started, they were on some strict curfew. Of course, we understand with the rising cases over in Puerto Rico. Now, across Puerto Rico, as we said, those residents are definitely happy. They were definitely ready to visit the beaches that had remained off limits to all except those doing exercise. And the governor said it's a quality of life. He also ordered Puerto Rico's Treasury Department to use federal funds and create economic incentives to help tens of thousands of small and medium businesses which were hit hard by the strict closures that have been in place since March. Now, the U.S. territory of Puerto Rico of 3.2 million people has reported more than 127,000 confirmed and probable cases and more than 1,200 confirmed deaths. Now, the governor kept in place other measures implemented by former Governor Wanda Vasquez, including the closure of bars and a limited capacity at gyms, restaurants, and other places. He went on by saying, our goal has to be able to return to a new normal. Yes. We have to keep taking preventative measures in the meanwhile. The announcement comes the same day that the health experts began receiving the second COVID-19 dose, with some of 60,000 people vaccinated so far and expected 90,000 by the end of the week, Ron. Now, Ron, we can see where these governors, former governor Wanda Vasquez and now this new governor, they're taking different approaches.
Which happens quite a bit.
It happened quite a bit, and I think it really comes down to, once again, economy versus health. I think she probably realized that she could not afford. It was not debt on her hands. She definitely could not deal with that. So she stuck to those strict measures. But we see where Governor Perlusi, he's taking a different approach.
Kyla, when it comes to the role of politics, we do have to understand that different, whether it's individuals or political parties, have a different way of doing things. And at the end of it, in the final analysis, once it benefits the long term of residents, I think that's the most important. Wanda Vasquez, definitely had a different approach. I do understand the importance, and unfortunately, when a new administration in any territory takes on something new, first of all, what a lot of persons don't understand is that they have to, first of all, they spend a lot of time fixing what was done before, either fixing or undoing what was done before, just because it is not their style of leadership. So a lot of time in the beginning stages are wasted just redoing or undoing what the former administration did just because you don't like it. And I think this is an example of what we see here in Puerto Rico. But we continue to wish the residents of Puerto Rico the very best.
We definitely wish them the best as well under this new leadership. Now, viewers, still ahead, BVI Red Cross, Green VI, and DWM teams up for Sicars Bay cleanup. All this and so much more when 284 News returns.
Is business slow? Cash flow down? Hosting an upcoming event? We can help. Advertise with 284 Media and take your business or event to the next level by enhancing your present marketing and messaging strategies. Allow our team of experts to create a personalized ad that sets your business apart from all the rest. This could be your business or event. So, what are you waiting for? Contact our marketing team at 284media@cctbvi.com. Advertising with us works.
Father Jesus, that line here long like church service.
Alright, do enjoy the rest of it then. Next customer line, please. Wait, hold on a second.
Yes, Sonny boy, come, yes, Sonny.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sonny boy. Hold on there. You must have cut front of people.
It's okay, I'll take care of it.
What? No man to take care of me.
How may I assist you?
Yes.
You want top of power?
You want top of power?
Join the prepaid party with CCT and enjoy more affordable data plans, more top-up promotions, more savings with hero bundles, and more value for your money each and every Tuesday with Top Up Turn Up Tuesday. Visit a CCT store today or anywhere CCT Top Up is sold and top up your phone.
5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. You want top of power?
Viewers, welcome back. Thanks for sticking with us. You're watching 284 News. On the local scene here in the British Virgin Islands, the BVI Red Cross, Green VI, and DWM teamed up for a Seacows Bay cleanup. The cleanup was a part of the Enhanced Vulnerability and Capacity Assessment process, which took place on Tuesday, January 5th, 2021. Now, as part of the Seacows Bay Enhanced Vulnerability and Capacity Assessment process, the BVI Red Cross teamed up with Green VI and the Department of Waste Management for a community cleanup. The BVI Red Cross Disaster Management Officer, Miss Christy Creaky, said in an official comment, and I quote, "At the core of this process and disaster management is understanding the needs of the community. This awareness involves both current and historic knowledge. The cleanup is one to mitigate action outlined in the EVC. Now, the EVCA involves a risk analysis in a particular community and, of course, identification of solutions. The cleanup, which had 35 participants, started at the well of the Ebenezer Thomas Primary School in Seacows Bay and ended at the La Santa Bakery. Now, the Seacows Bay EVCA was officially handed over last January. The next phase of the assessment is the Micro Mitigation Action Plan, where a team is identified to coordinate and execute the same. Now, to that end, Ms. Creaky said, and I quote, "Part of the EVCA process involves creating a team of first responders in each community assessed. We are hoping to soon engage persons from the Seacows Bay community to take a first aid course," which I think is absolutely remarkable, and I should commend, of course, the BVI Red Cross for thinking about that and making sure that there are first aid responders in just about each community as we can possibly hope for. Now, Mrs. Creaky continued by saying, "Any first aid training offered as part of the EVCA is free." She encourages interested persons in the Seacows Bay area to contact the BVI Red Cross at 494-6349 or email them at info@redcross.vg to arrange training. Of course, the next EVCA training will be done in a personal estate later this year. The Enhanced Vulnerability Capacity Assessment Report is part of the BVI Red Cross Disaster Management Resilience Program and is being conducted in a total of 6 communities in the Virgin Islands. Kudos to them for this very considerate training that I think will benefit the territory of the Virgin Islands and particularly the youth very much.
Most definitely. Now, viewers, before we close out, our last story for this evening as well is you can check that out on our website. But Ron, much conversation as we span over to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Now, really daunting stuff as the volcano over there have been having some sort of activity.
A lot of activity, yes.
And now yesterday, a trip to the volcano, the crater rim, just yesterday by the team from the UWI Research Center has revealed that the dome continues to grow. Now, Vincentian geologist Professor Richard Robinson and his team installed a monitoring station nearby the site. Now, they made a trip to the crater rim to take some photos and videos, which will allow them to estimate the volume of material exuding and the growth of the new dome. Now, based on observation just yesterday, the dome is slowly getting bigger. The SRC team will conduct basically a watch of the volcano run on board the French helicopter today through an arrangement between the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the government of France through the Embassy of France to the Eastern Caribbean state, to Barbados and the OECS in St. Lucia. Ron, very daunting news.
Yes.
As we continue to see that growth and that activity in a volcano that was dormant for over 4 decades.
Yes, ma'am.
Definitely came out of nowhere for the residents of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but we wish them all the best right here from the British Virgin Islands.
I think, Kyla, this is another example of the uncertainty of natural disasters, and living in a Caribbean and volcanic area, a prone area. I think this is subject to a lot of Caribbean territories where it's very spontaneous. It's not something that you could prepare for. One of the difficult parts as we look and we really assess the situation in the St. Vincent and the Grenadines,
Yes.
which is similar to what we saw in Montserrat, is really the decision between whether you stay or leave. Persons have their lives there and in that particular area, so we continue to wish them the very best. Viewers, that is all the time we have. We thank you so much for sticking with us. Have a happy Wednesday. I'm Ron Grant.
And I am Kyla Kenesha Forbes. We'll see you again tomorrow. We are 284 News, your source for honest and impartial news right here on 284 Media. Have a happy evening, everyone.
Bye-bye.